Video game piracy is something that you hear about every so often. Not really as much as it used to back in the day, but you still hear about it once in a while about people downloading a game that they did not legally purchase and how it may hurt the developer if you decide to steal from them. Video game piracy definitely has a much more negative connotation to it than, let's say, pirating a song album or a movie. Like, video game piracy seems to have a lot more strong feelings, like negative feelings towards it, than, oh, you torrented a whole bunch of songs or you torrented some movies. But if you torrent a game, whoa, that is totally wrong. Like, like, am I the only one that has that perception, or that feels like that perception is out there when it comes to video game piracy? Like, it is inherently an awful thing compared to piracy when it comes to other mediums. Like, because for me, for example, I've never pirated a video game before. Well, that's technically not true because I've downloaded emulators, and we've talked about emulators in the past, so technically I guess I have pirated games before, but in the sense of like a new game like The Witcher coming out or something like that, where it's a game that you can torrent, and it's not really that difficult to do, but I've never really done anything like that, where like I take a modern game and I torrent it, I download a cracked copy of it, and that's how I play the game. Like, I've never done that before. I have pirated on other mediums. Does anybody remember LimeWire back in the day? Oh man, I used to have an iPod. I would download all of these songs and put them into my iPod, never buying a song because I thought paying $1 for each song on iTunes was ridiculous. And I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing that. And I actually remember back in school, if someone ever mentions like buying a song on iTunes or something because they got money for their birthday or whatever, like, we'd all look at them and laugh because, like, what, like, you actually buy music? Like, you could literally just download everything for free. But there's certainly a lot of negative moral implications to illegally downloading copyrighted material, in the sense that artists, they depend on music sales. Not anymore, but I'm saying, like, back in the early 2000s when this was really going on, artists were missing out on a lot of royalty fees, and yeah, sure, most of it went to the record label, but some harm was obviously being done to especially the small independent artists that, they could tour around the country and everything, because that's really the way that you make money as a music artist. But if no one's ever heard of you before, chances are your tickets aren't selling that well, and, that's what independent artists, they relied on that income from their albums, from their songs. Back then, buying the CDs was really, like, the best way to support independent artists, but obviously the music industry has evolved since then. With streaming services like Spotify, it feels like everybody has some type of way of legally consuming this material. I'm a Spotify premium member, and I love the service, and I feel like, well, I'm getting a lot of money's worth paying for it because I have access to all these songs. I'm paying $5 a month because I'm a college student, not for long, so I'm going to have to pay the full $10 very soon. The thing is, I'm more than happy to do that because I love the service, and I feel like I'm actually getting my money's worth. And you have a lot of competition in the music streaming world. You have Spotify, you have Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Tidal, Pandora, and there's just so many of them. But the thing is, you're not locked behind. You don't have to buy a specific streaming service in order to have access to certain songs. Like, as far as the actual music library is concerned, it's pretty comparable. Like, there may be certain songs that are only on one platform over the other, but that's not, like, a selling point for that platform. Like, if you decide to switch from Spotify to, like, YouTube Music, you don't get screwed over because you have, like, less of a song library. It's actually pretty much the same. Like, you don't have to worry about if you switch a service to only, like, you'd have to buy multiple services in order to have access to all these songs, and it gets expensive. And that's the thing, when it comes to TV shows and movies, I'll admit, I pirate that shit. I've seen every episode of The Mandalorian without ever buying Disney+. I had Netflix until recently, but that was because I had T-Mobile, and they paid for Netflix, but then I switched to Cricket, so they cut my Netflix off, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel like paying for Netflix again, so I'm just going to not bother. And if I ever want to watch, like, The Witcher or something, I know where to go. Not going to give any links or anything, because this video can be taken down for, like, copyright, but I know where to go. And the thing is, I just don't feel bad for pirating movies and TV shows because I just don't want to have to pay up to $50 a month, really, if you think about it. If I get all the good streaming services, if I get Disney Plus, if I get Hulu, if I get Netflix, if I get Amazon, all of that, then like it's gonna end up being pretty comparable to a standard cable television bill. And that cord cutting, wasn't that like supposed to avoid all that? But now the streaming industry is literally becoming what it wants to replace, which is the cable TV industry. People with their exorbitant expensive cable bills had enough, and they just like, screw this, I'm gonna pay like $10 a month for Netflix. But the one thing is, you have all this competition with exclusive shows that you need to have that service in order to use, and on top of that, they keep raising the prices. Like Netflix keeps raising their prices every year, it seems. So I'm like, fuck that. I am not paying for all these streaming services. Sorry. But I think out of everything that I've ever pirated, I think the thing that I consistently always look to pirate before I buy are textbooks for college. I saved thousands of dollars torrenting these textbooks because I was not paying hundreds of dollars each semester for textbooks. No way. I pay enough with tuition. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars more on textbooks. I would either pirate the book, right? If I found a torrent. If I didn't find a torrent, what I'd often do would just like not buy the book, or I would find someone that has the book and just like take screenshots on my phone of certain pages if I absolutely needed it. And there were a handful of times where I actually bought the book, but with my 4 years in college, I have actually purchased 3 textbooks. My entire time in college, I purchased 3 books because it was an open book test, but you had to have the textbook. So I'm like, I guess I'll just buy the textbook then. Fine, you know, it's an easy grade. If you have the open book, you can get like a 90 something on the test, and that's exactly what I did. So it was worth the money, boosting my GPA, absolutely. Okay, yeah, fine. But in general, I think I've done a really good job avoiding paying for textbooks. If you're going to college anytime soon, there are ways to get around buying textbooks. Fuck them. They don't deserve your money. That's called extortion. And if you have those professors that have like these online access codes that cost like $100, fucking drop the class. Trust me. You'll save a lot of money and you'll save a lot of headache, because there was one time where I had to do that. I'm like, nope, dropping the class. Because I'm not stealing from you. You are stealing from me. I paid for my education, bitch. And there's a reason why I gave these 3 examples: music, TV/movies, and textbooks. Because notice that the instances where I pirate are the instances where I feel like they don't deserve my money. They didn't do a good enough job to justify me giving them money. They didn't earn it. They're pretty much extorting me. Because as we were talking with movies and TV shows, you have all these different services. You have to spend so much money. Let's say you only like 3 shows. You like The Witcher, you love The Mandalorian, and I don't know, Game of Thrones. You have to buy all those 3 separate streaming services in order to watch all those shows. Even though you only watch 3 shows, there are only 3 shows you love, you have to buy all of it. And that just seems too unreasonable for me to really do that. But with music, I'm so happy with Spotify. I have no problem paying for Spotify, to the point that I've never even thought about pirating music for at least 5 years now. I mean, Spotify is phenomenal. And like I said with the textbooks, it's straight up extortion. Like, they don't even hide it. Like, yeah, no, go fuck yourself. I'm not buying shit. And I bring all of this up just to make this point that I've never really felt the urge to pirate a video game. The closest I've ever come to doing that, besides emulation, that's pretty much piracy, I guess you could say. But if the game's like 20, 30 years old, I don't really think it really matters in terms of the implications, the negative impact it could have on the video game industry. Like, most of these games that are emulated, like, aren't even for sale anymore. So who's really being harmed in that situation? But we talked about that in the previous video. Not going to rehash everything I've said before. If you want me to expand on that, check out that video titled Ethics of Emulation. Besides emulation, I think the closest I've ever been to, like, fully pirating a video game was when I got Gary's Mod. Anyone who's familiar with Gary's Mod knows that if you do not actually have the Counter-Strike source textures, you have a whole bunch of error signs, and it's just like, it's pretty much unplayable, really. But I didn't own Counter-Strike source. I didn't know that in order to really play the game, you have to buy another game. Like, it didn't say any of that on the actual, like, store page on the game on Steam. So I felt like I was kind of getting ripped off. So I'm like, screw this. You know, I'm not going to buy Counter-Strike Source because I don't want it. I want Gary's mod. Why couldn't you just include the textures in the game? So I had absolutely no problem going to some Russian website and downloading the textures and putting them into my Gmod folder, and then I got the full game. But I guess technically that's piracy, but that's kind of like, not really. But that's like the closest I've ever been to pirating. And pirating is really such a rare thing these days. I don't know if it might be the rise in DRM technology that makes it more difficult. But then again, remember Ubisoft? They had DRM locks on every single one of their games, but people were still able to crack the game illegally. Like, DRM is not really the only answer to this equation, like why people don't really pirate that much. I think it's honestly, given the previous examples I've given of examples of me pirating and not pirating, people do not pirate. People would rather do the right thing if they feel like they are being treated the right way. And the greatest example I could think of is The Witcher 3. I mean, that game is literally one of the easiest games to pirate. I mean, you can find it easily. You can find a cracked game easily, and there are no repercussions. CD Projekt Red doesn't believe in going after people who pirate their games. Their whole philosophy is to make sure that they do everything they can to earn the sale for that game by creating a product that you would have no problem paying $60 for, and you feel like you are actually getting your money's worth. And I think that really hits at, like, the reason why emulation is such a popular thing when it comes to video games, and I guess it's kind of piracy, but the thing is, people do not want to have to go out and buy an old console that, you know, may or may not work, who knows, because these sellers online are pretty sketchy, and then the game cartridges themselves cost sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. Like, if you want to play every game on a platform, you are going to pretty much have to put a second mortgage on your house, maybe sell your car. You know, it's just, like, ridiculous, like, how much money you have to put down if you actually want to play things, like, the right way, or the authentic way, or the legal way, whatever you want to say. But I think, like, with modern games, for example, like, let's say Jedi Fallen Order, for example, like, you either want to play it or you don't want to play it. I don't think people are going to go out of their way to try to pirate that game if they just don't have any interest in it. But if they have interest in it, chances are they'll be more than willing to pay for it. Because video games, with all the shady shit that happens with the video game industry, I still think they do a much better job at enticing people to put money down on a product than other industries, like the TV industry, like the movie industry, and of course college textbooks, which is just like the easiest example of like paying for things, and why piracy is sometimes pretty necessary, actually, especially when it's much easier, not just financially, but just in terms of accessibility to actually crack it and pirate it than to actually purchase a legitimate copy. That's the case a lot with textbooks when it comes to cost. When it comes to movies, I mean, I have everything in one place. It's so much easier than flipping through 5 streaming services. And we mentioned DRM earlier about Ubisoft and these other companies that kind of make it really difficult to access the game with these constant online check-ins to make sure that you're not pirating and all that. Sometimes it's just easier to actually pirate it if the DRM is removed from the original game, and it actually is easier to play and easier to access than actually getting the legitimate copy. So convenience is definitely one thing that influences one's decision to pirate, and especially like when it comes to video games, there are people who want to be able to try the game out. There's no demo or free trial or anything like that. You have to buy the game and take a chance. But the thing is, like with PC, is that really true? Because with Steam, you have refunds, right? And PC seems to be the platform where you have the most piracy. So if you pirate a game on Steam, saying, well, there's no free... There is no way to try the game out, Steam pretty much has like a no questions asked refund policy, so I don't think that rationale really works out in that case. Maybe if you're on a platform like Epic or some other storefront that doesn't have such a good refund policy, then maybe, but when it comes to Steam, like, I don't really see that side of the argument. But, as always, I want to know what you guys think, and specifically when it comes to this topic, I want to know an example, like a situation where you have pirated a game, and what made you decide to do that? Like, what was your moral thinking in deciding to pirate a game. Or if you haven't pirated a game before, just think of a specific example of when you've pirated anything. Because let's face it, all of us have pirated at least something in our lives. So like, give an example of something that you pirated. Doesn't necessarily even have to be video game related, but something that you've pirated and why you decided to do it. And if you ever think of the harm that it may do to the artist or the creator or the publisher, whoever puts that piece of work out there, do you ever feel like, oh man, like I would have really liked to buy the product and I kind of feel bad for not doing it, but I just had to pirate it for whatever reason? I'd like to know your moral principles when it comes to piracy. So with that said, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.